Hello and welcome to my latest video. In this one I'm going to be talking about how to create a blurred background for your pencil drawings. If you enjoy this video, please don't hesitate to hit subscribe and hit the little bells to make sure you get the notifications for any new videos are uploaded. And if you're interested in learning more about how to draw pet portraits in pencil, don't forget to click the link in the description and that will take you over to my Skillshare class, Pet Portraits 101. I hope you enjoy the video and leave me a comment if you've got any questions, and thank you for watching. For this project I use Staedtler Mars Lumograph black pencils, and these are slightly different from your standard graphite pencils because they have a lot of carbon included in the leads. So what this means is that the dark shadows are blacker than normal graphite, and it also creates more of a matte finish, so you don't get that shiny finish that you often do when you layer lots and lots of layers of graphite. You'll also see me using a blending stump and a putty eraser while I complete this background. So first of all I started off with the 2B pencil. The Lumograph black pencils only come in 4 degrees of hardness, 2B, 4B, 6B and 8B, but it was fine for this project, and I actually used the pencils for the detailed drawing of the horse as well, not just the background. So I started off with the 2B pencil, which I just layered over. You'll have seen me using it on the side of the pencil just to cover the area quicker, and I then blended it over with my paper blending stump. One of the most obvious differences between drawing detailed drawings and creating this sort of blurry background is the need to avoid texture. So that was one of the reasons you'll see me using the blending stump in this drawing, is just to make sure that everything's nice and smooth and blurry. Another way of ensuring that the drawing was nice and smooth was to use the smooth paper, because if you use a rough paper you'd end up with the texture from the paper showing through. So this paper that I'm using here is a heavyweight cartridge paper. It's acid free and archival. It's just a 250 GSM Rowney cartridge paper. I have used a reference photograph for this drawing. This reference came from Pixabay, and it's probably quite hard to tell on here, but I have drawn out a light sort of sketch even for the background elements, because it's not just entirely a blurry background. It's recognisable what it is. It's a tree and a fence and that sort of thing. And I wanted to make sure that these objects were still recognisable in the background. So I drew out a very light sketch just with my pencil when I drew out the detail on the horse as well. I started with adding my layers of shading in the top right hand corner. You'll see I've just got my hand resting on a plain piece of white paper, and that's just so I don't end up smudging my hand across the drawing and make a great big mess. It's not entirely foolproof, and I still do manage to make a mess, but not quite so much as if I didn't have the paper there. So what I'm just doing is starting off with light layers. You'll see that the pencil lines, they're a little bit scribbly. I'm just laying them down nice and quick. The good thing about doing this is the point of it is to make it fuzzy looking, so it's not going to matter if I go over the sketch lines that I've drawn out for the reference. That's kind of the point really. So I've just got some scribbly sort of lines that I put down, starting off nice and light. I actually do go a little bit dark here at the top, and later on you will see me rub it out. So what I tried to do after I'd made that mistake was then to just keep the rest of it nice and light. The thing is with graphite pencil, it's you can lift it off once you've done it, but it's a lot harder than it is to make it darker. So my general rule, and one of the sort of main tips that I give anybody that's sort of learning to draw and wanting to know about shading and things, is start off light and build up your layers, because you can always add more layers. It's just an awful lot harder to take them off. So like I said already, I've got 4 different grades of pencils here, and I tend to switch between the 4B and the 6B mainly. The 2B just for the really lightest areas, and then the darker the pencils, the less pressure you have to apply to the paper to create your darker marks. So this is probably a 6 or possibly the 4 at this point. just layering down, following my sketch, and also with the reference photograph, as you can see, is right there next to me when I work, so I can keep checking back to that bit as well. One of the ways that I kept my layers nice and light during this drawing was to keep my pencils blunt. This isn't normally something I do when I'm working on a detailed drawing. My advice is always to keep your pencils nice and sharp. So it was quite strange, but also quite nice in a way, to let my pencils get nice and soft and nice and blunt when I was drawing this background. The other thing is just to simply keep the pressure on the pencils nice and light, and build up your shadows using multiple layers instead of pressing hard with the pencil. So you'll see that I'll go over areas, or time and time again, there's some bits will have 4 or 5 different layers of pencil on here, as I sort of go back over sections just to make it darker. And I might start off an area with a 2B or a 4B pencil, and then to make it darker I'll use the 6B or an 8B to just go lightly over it instead of just using the same pencil over and over again as well. At this stage I'm just referring back to the reference photo the whole time, and just copying what I can see there. This reference photograph was actually in black and white when I downloaded it off of Pixabay. But you can always convert a photograph to black and white. It's quite often helpful if you've got a colour photo to convert it to black and white in a Photoshop or some other sort of photo editing software. Another thing you could always do if you fancied creating a blurred background but couldn't find a reference photograph you actually wanted, again, if you were clever in Photoshop or have got a friend who's clever with Photoshop, you could probably get them to blur out a background for you when you download a reference photograph. So once I've done the tree, I blended over that with my my blending stump, and what that does, it just basically smudges everything in together. And the good thing about the blending stump as well is it picks up the graphite on the end of it, so you can then use it almost like a pencil to lay down the graphite in other areas. And for this sort of blurred background, it really helped with bringing all the different shades and values and tones, all helped with bringing it all together. It was important when I was drawing this background to make sure that I was only focusing on the shading and the different values of the objects in the background, instead of making a point of trying to draw a tree or draw a fence or draw the ground or anything like that. So here's when I realised that I'd gone too dark in the shading at the top. So I've used my Putty Eraser, and they're really, really great as long as you keep them nice and warm and soft. You can roll them up into a ball and then roll them over your drawing to pick up any graphite that you don't want there. And it came in really, really handy, not only to clear that sort of big area at the top, but also and some of the smaller sort of circly bits as well as part of the tree. So after I lifted the darker bits that were too dark, I then just sort of went over with, I think it was a 4B pencil, just to try and smooth out that top bit of shading because it had gone a bit rough where I tried to pick it up. So it was another sort of lesson learned, to definitely try and start off lighter than what I normally do. So here I'm just working on the section between the horse's ears, much the same as I've done the rest of it, just as layers with the different pencils, starting off with the 2B and then the 4 and the 6B, and just referencing the photograph the whole time to make sure I've got the shading in the right. So the final bit was to work on the bit of fence and the ground. So I started off just with the pencil again on the side to make a nice light layer, and then I blended that over with the blending stump. And first of all I started with the fence posts. So again, just copying the reference, just drawing in the lines, nice and loose and scribbly and nice and light with the pencil as well. Where I've come up against the edges there against the horse, I've tried to keep that sort of fuzzy a little bit as well, and to go over my sketch line slightly so that when I then come back to do the detail, there won't be any sort of hard edges or gaps between the background and the foreground. The foreground will just be drawn over the very edges of the background there. So I started off just building up the darker layers really of the fence posts, the bits that are more defined, but again trying to stay fuzzy over the edges and just get paler towards the edges of the fence rails and sort of blending into that background there. I don't normally add backgrounds to my pictures, but this is a real fun challenge to step away from my normal, real, detailed, precise approach to create this blurred background. And I really hope that the tips I've shared in this video will help you when you start creating your own blurred backgrounds for your drawings. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and make sure you click the bell to get notifications for new videos. You can find more of my drawings over on Instagram and Facebook. If you just have a search for North Highlands Art, then you should be able to find me. And also, if you are interested in learning more about how to draw pets in pencil, have a look at my class on Skillshare called Pet Portraits 101. The link is in the description. Thanks very much for watching and see you soon.